Vad händer efter att man checkat ut från Paradise Hotel?
Hola, guapa. Det kanske finns en chans för dig att få komma tillbaka in i huset igen.
Vad fan är detta?
Keep on smiling, onsdagar 22:00 på Via Free.
Welcome back to the Nordic Championship. We're here with Hearthstone, and we just had our first semi-finals being played. And therefore, we also have our first finalist, and he is standing with us on the desk. It is Deathboo's. Congratulations, first of all. So I have a question. I watched that game where you played your warrior, and then you were playing against Inetsu. You were so close, to getting out. How did you keep your cool?
Basically, it's because I know the Swedish community is going to support me, whether or not if I lose or win. So I managed to keep my cool. I was actually surprised, feeling my heart rate. It was actually really low compared to what I had in the national championships.
It was a great series.
It really was, yeah. And I just want to talk to you about the closing moments. You're playing Druid against the Zoo, and you went really like hyper control safe, like trading into 2-1s instead of sending the damage space. I guess you were just kind of playing around like quick shot into something kind of out from your opponent.
Like, and at the absolute last note, I knew that like there is no card that he can draw that will defeat the double giant.
Sure.
So I was like, I'd rather take it safe and take it a few extra turns, being guaranteed the win.
Makes sense?
Makes sense, but I wanted to ask about the Doomsayers and the Warrior. What is the reason to play the additional Doomsayers, and what did you cut to have them in the deck?
I cut one of the Ravaging Ghouls, and I cut it because the reason there is not a lot of 1 HP minions left, there is a lot of 2 HP minions, and it feels like the Doom... Like, it was the moment where you went double flame in turn 1 and then followed up with Direwolf. That was pretty sad, but other than that, like, most of the times the Doomsayer goes off there, and I can just take the game from there.
Yeah, definitely agree. When we saw the Doomsayer, we were like, oh my god, Zoo is dead, basically. But then a double flame and opener just crushed your strategy, because the first Doomsayer was practically pointless, right? Just bought 8 HP, but that's about it.
Luckily, you got the golden combination of getting beaten up and drawing revenge, which is pretty effective in that matchup. Like, generally, if Zoo gets that much of a quick start, they're kind of forced to go aggressive, right, and just play into revenge. There was one moment where he played around it.
Yeah, he played around it. It was actually a moment where I was really proud of him, because I was like, I know him really well, so I was like, he won't make this misplay. And I saw he was starting to it, and he hesitated, and I was like, he's going to figure it out now.
We actually did miss-sequence slightly, right, because he could have attacked with the Juggler for 3 and not the Direwolf for 2 and left you at 13 instead of 14, but still played around revenge in general. I think both of you guys played that series very well, and I'm sure you're a little bit of sadness for eliminating someone that's a good friend, practice partner for you, but surely Swedish national pride overtakes that for you.
It's going to feel good.
That's the way brackets work, unfortunately. And we do have a showing of those brackets as well for you at home to see what's happening next, because we have another semi-finals coming up, and it's going to be Spartacus taking on Thomerio. And I don't know about you, like, is there anybody you favor in that matchup, that's Boost?
I know Spartacus. I actually don't know Thomerio. He added me on Skype when he qualified, and we were talking about it. But I favor Spartacus just because I know him. I don't know anything about Thomerio, but I will be happy to see them play.
Like a dark horse coming in. And is there anything extra you can tell us about Thomerio if you talk to him on Skype? Like, because for us it's the same. We couldn't find any information about him as well. So anything is welcome here.
He seems like one of the guys that wants to get up and come to the scene, and this is his shot. And I hope he prepared well for it.
Okay.
Well, maybe he brought something completely off the hook, and will just surprise everyone.
Yeah, the Dane is scared of that, actually. We were talking about it last night.
That is all we can hope for anyway. We are going to have a short break, and when we're back, we're going to be in the semi-finals of the Hearthstone Nordic Championship. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Nordic Championship. We have just seen the first semi-final, and we only have 2 more matches left. The grand finalist, Deathboost, is already waiting for his opponent. Who will be the next opponent, so?
Well, it's going to be facing the winner of Thomerio and Spartacus, and we talked about this a little bit in the intro. These are the 2 dark horses, Thomerio even more so than Spartacus, but these are two players that even, we tried, we put our Google foo to the test and we could not find much information on these guys. Spartacus, the best I've got is that he's moderately well known in the Danish scene, has done reasonably well around in some local Danish stuff, but not broken out beyond that. Thomerio is a complete unknown. This guy could be coming in with just the most weird, random strategy out of anywhere from anything we know.
I'm actually surprised that he's here, because, if something is not in Google, then it doesn't exist, right?
That's very true, yeah.
But I'm really hoping that he brought something that is really interesting to watch. I also am really interested to see the level of play that they will represent, right? Because that's something that, well, we did cast a bunch of tournaments, and we have seen from top amazing players to, well, not so amazing players, but there's always a lot of room to improve for everyone, and it's interesting to see someone that is new to the scene. You can see maybe some different play styles as well. Maybe someone is hyper aggressive, even with control decks, and there's always something exciting about casting new guys.
Yeah, and it's something that I've really enjoyed about the Switch. Wow, you need to check your privilege, Lothar, real quick.
PC Lothar.
It's something I've really enjoyed about the open era that we've moved into throughout 2016 is that we've been introduced to so many new faces and we've learned and grown along with them. Take Pavel as a shining example, right?
Exactly.
This is a guy that not too many people knew anything about. Now he's heralded as our world champion after an incredible year, all in all, incredible level of consistency throughout. But just beyond Pavel, even just these names that we see popping up in open tournaments, we do get to look at them, we get to evaluate them, we get to sit up here on our high horse and judge their play, Lothar, rightly or wrongly. And that's something that I've loved to be able to do for this whole year that's gone past. There's so many new faces that I've been introduced to.
That's true, and you might even forget that people like Tyson, example, was an unknown at some point as well. People know him because he was playing in open tournaments, because he was just got into ESL King of the Hill at that point. So there was a lot of players that were actually complete unknown, and they were just grinding it out in tournaments, attending every single thing, and just try to win, try to get into that circle of friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, and again, this kind of format really does establish that dynamic for you. You play through, you win your national representatives title, you come on to represent your nation, you can then be held up as a champion of the Nordic region, and that really creates a platform for you. It gets your name out there. It means that you can start pushing forward towards the bigger global events. So I love seeing these kind of regional things take place to really dig out the potential superstars from each of these countries.
Hopefully, we'll see a really good match here, and the players are almost already sitting in the booths. As we said before, the scene is quite insane. You can see it already. The scene here is worth mentioning is actually it's a host for 3 games. We have seen the Nordic champion for StarCraft. Now we'll crown the Hearthstone champion, but after that we'll also have the CS:GO championships here.
Yes.
So it's a unique event, I would say. Not often do you see something like that is happening on one stage.
Absolutely. I mean, it kind of throws up its own storylines, right? Can one country just dominate all of the games and really stamp their seal of dominance on the Nordic region as a whole, all that kind of thing? But these players are playing for national pride. They're also playing for that beautiful trophy that we panned past, and also the not insignificant factor of 3,000 euros.
3,000 euros is quite a lot.
Hard hold cash.
I mean, a lot of players, when I ask someone that won a tournament, right, and I'm asking, what do you do with your prize pool? One thing that I really want to hear is that they want to invest it back and use that money to travel to more events.
Right.
That is, I think that's the best thing that you can do if you value your own career, right? If you want to be a professional player, then you need to put something in first to get it back then later.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned this before, as a lot of players in Hearthstone are doing this off their own back, and in this context, doing it out of their own wallet. They don't have these big organizations supporting them, salarying them, sending them to these events for free and paying for their flights and hotel rooms and all these necessities that you need to really compete on the esports circuit over a year's time. So just getting $3,000 in your back pocket, that can get you to a couple of events, huge events, and you can then just try and turn that $3,000 into $10,000 and just go from there and really start snowballing your career in that position. But more importantly, just start mixing and matching with the best, get your name out there.
That's true. You said a couple events, but if it's in Sweden, maybe that's just one.
Just the one, yeah, fair enough, fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, this event, worth mentioning as well, is the fact that those guys went through a lot to get here.
Oh, yeah.
This is already like the intense moment when they have the high stakes games, and it's all about winning. It doesn't really matter if you get the 4th or 3rd place. You want to win this game. So you want to win this tournament and get the multi-international title.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned this about Janetsky when he got eliminated in the game that we just watched. This is, you know, not just 4 guys who've shown up and he's just got blown out in the first round. This is him essentially making top 4 in an absolutely huge, sprawling tournament that we're only watching the later stages of. So all of these players, just to have got to this point in the first place is a staggering achievement. They are representing their country, which for most people in most disciplines, not even esports, not even just sports, but wider than that, anything you do, you want to represent your country, right? You want to be able to fly that flag, not only for national pride, but it's just such a great testament to you to say that you've made it, you are good at what you do, you are the best in your country, you are the flag bearer, the standard bearer for your region.
Standard bearer, yeah, I like that. I really like that, and worth mentioning is also the fact that the Swedish, sorry, not only the Swedish, but all of Nordics, the Nordic countries have very well developed Hearthstone scenes.
Yes.
So there's a lot of players. It's not like, you know, it's a small scene that there's just a couple of guys that are really known and good in the game, and they always win those qualifiers or whatever. The Swedish scene is huge.
Right.
We have the world champion, right, from Sweden.
The former world champion.
Sorry, former world champion, you're correct. Former world champion that actually signed with Alliance just yesterday, if I remember correctly.
Right.
There's Orange, there's so many players from Sweden, and to see just new players coming into the scene, I mean, Def was maybe not that new, but it's still great to see that players are going through those grinds and getting to represent their countries here. So.
For sure. I mean, the strength of individual countries is something that's really been brought into focus by some of the plans from Blizzard that have come out from 2017. Exactly. Global games coming out is going to be essentially the World Cup of Hearthstone, country versus country. So there's been a lot of discussion around the scene. Who exactly is the most powerful country? Who's able to put together the best looking team? And during that discussion, Sweden comes up pretty often,
and
Denmark comes up pretty often. If you look at that, I mean, like, Crane, Hoy, Tessin is also a major winner.
That's true.
Really starting to put together, but yeah, I mean, Germany as well, but, you know, just looking at this competition that we have here, 2 of the countries, Denmark and Sweden, are really held up as potentially being 2 of the powerhouses in that upcoming Global Games event.
That's true. My 2 picks will be personal picks, will be Sweden and Germany as
stacked.
as the favorites. And it's kind of funny as well because Germany always has a big scene in every single game.
Right.
It's kind of weird. But Denmark is such a small country, right? And yet we have so many good players. Yeah. It's very interesting to see. So we'll have small technical issues, but we'll be back after a 3-minute break to get you guys back into the game. So don't go anywhere. This is the Nordic Championship.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Nordic Championship Hearthstone section. This is the 2nd semi-final. Deathboost has already gone through to represent Sweden in the final. And facing off to meet him there will be Thomerio from Norway and Spartacus from Denmark. We've already introed these players, Lothar, as best we can, so hopefully they're ready to get into game as quickly as possible.
I would love to talk about the decks, but, well, we didn't get that memo.
We did not, no.
Yeah.
Lucky. But yeah, hopefully these guys are ready to get started very, very soon. As we mentioned, the 2 underdogs, really, out of these 4 players. Janetsky and Deathboost are at least known within the Hearthstone esports community. They've had decent results at DreamHacks. They've played in Hearthstone Championship Tour prelims. There's a top 3 GigaCon in there, and also King of the Hill wins, big ESL production that they've been putting on. You were talking about was Tice's real big breakout performance as well. So those
gateway to be famous.
There you go. So those 2 players really fought it out to take the title of the favorite spot going into the grand finals, and now it's the 2 underdogs duking it out to see who's going to have to try and elevate their game and step up and take out one of those in the final.
I really hope someone brings a rogue or a priest, because those are the 2 classes that are the underdogs that will fit the theme.
Sure.
You know? But at the same time, we had a lot of discussion with Ardur actually about the priest. Like, he was saying on Twitter that it's so insane against Shaman and so on, right? But I actually think a lot of people disagree. I mean, he had some insane runs on the heroic brawls, right, with it. But at the same time, I feel like it's still the the Priest before the new expansion is something that is not really that great to play.
Yeah, I would agree. I think even Dragon Priest is just... It made a big splash. People had some good Heroic Tavern Brawl runs with it. And based off of that, we've seen a couple of people bring it to the DreamHack Grand Prix that's going on upstairs right now. So I think those people are a little misguided. I think the deck is still a little bit weak in power level compared to a lot of things that you can do. Rogue, on the other hand, I actually think is fairly well placed at the moment to be able to get work done. And it's a... I don't know, it's an opinion I've kind of been infected with a little bit since Casey has signed for Complexity recently. He's always advocating for Rogue in our chat, always saying that the Rogue
Those people, man.
But I will say, he's got a list recently that he's been handing around that has been giving people who have been using it incredibly strong results. So who knows? Maybe Rogue is suddenly well positioned to be able to do some work. It's certainly useful in a couple of matchups, very effective against Druid. Malygos Rogue as well, really, really good at beating up those control warriors just because of the total amount of burst damage that they can put together. So it definitely has its strengths, but as you said, the power classes are those Shamans, Warlocks, Warriors, Druids. A little bit of Mage sprinkled in, a little bit of Hunter sprinkled in. That's what we've come to expect.
That's true. Like, Priest kind of feels like a bad Druid at this point, because it's basically has the same game plan as the Druid. It plays big, overpowered minions for the cost. Like an example, the Twilight Guardian, right?
Sure.
It's a 4-mana 3/6 minion with Taunt, which is one over when it comes to HP, it's one over the usual cost of the minion. And the same thing does Druid with his Innervate, because then when he plays a better minion on the curve that it shouldn't be allowed to. But at the same time, other spells that the Druid has access to is just... they're way more impactful than the Priest. So that's the problem where a Priest is currently. But I'm curious if there will be a better rogue list that can handle current metagame, especially since it just lacks healing, in my opinion. That's the thing that Rogue lost. I would say that's one of the key things that Rogue lost in the past.
Casey's solution to that is just to go even more aggressive. So he's favoring a questing list right now that actually adds in the South Sea deckhands as well, alongside the swashbucklers. So he's just really, really going super aggressive, pushing early damage. When questing's down, you always have cheap cards in your hand because of all the one-drops, as well as the cheap spells and the preparations and all that good stuff. So, you know, his solution is, I don't need healing. I'm going to kill you before you get a chance to kill me. And it's a list that's been working well for him. I know Crane's been running it in recent tournaments as well and doing well with it. So maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel for Rogue just yet.
Interesting approach, I would say, because that's basically like an aggro deck that plays like a combo deck.
Sure.
Right? And it feels very, let's say like that, if you play a deck like that in Magic the Gathering, it's a modern deck. So it's like a deck that has a huge access to burst damage, but lacks interaction. And in this case, when it comes to Hearthstone, I feel like there's a lot more interaction actually than Magic, because your deck has stuff like saps, like Eviscerates, right? And you have a lot of options that can trade the board or the tempo on the board at the same time. So it's actually crucial. But enough about Rogue and enough about Priest. You can see our players still dealing with something in the PCs. The deck list are being checked, if I'm not mistaken. Actually good to see that, right? Because something that is kind of trivialized, I think, and Hearthstone is checking people's deck lists.
Yes, sure.
When it comes to, you know, potential errors. Let's say not without malicious intent, right? But I feel like it's something that should be introduced more into the tournaments, especially after top 8, after top 16, just that every single deck is being checked before each game. So you spare yourself some embarrassing moments when you just start playing the game with a card that you shouldn't have.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, huge high stakes going down here. The pride of a region on the line, and you know, it's a little close to home really, because we've seen it happen at DreamHack events where we've had some potential drama coming out from some mistaken cards going into deck lists. So definitely important that these players get everything on point. The admins double check everything, make sure everything is above board, and now hopefully, maybe, finally, we might have a game of Hearthstone. What do you think?
I hope so. I really hope so. By the way, I think actually Pavel had a situation when he had a card that he didn't submit, and he ended up didn't using it. Like, he had it in hand in a recent tournament, and he just didn't play the card. It was Bloodlust in his hand.
Is that so?
Yeah, I think he tweeted about it, you know?
Interesting.
Because he just played it as a 29th card. 29 card deck.
Yeah, so there's just one turn where he just didn't draw a card.
Yeah, exactly, and he still won.
Yeah. Like, this Bloodlust doesn't exist. It's just not in my deck, but... Hey, looks like we are now finally ready to get into game. Remember, Death Boost is waiting in the finals. The Swedish representative, he is waiting for the winner of this. And right off the bat, I said I wonder if there is going to be some unconventional stuff coming from our underdog players. This is a Dragon Control Warrior playing a big game hunter.
Okay, let's evaluate how valuable is a big game hunter currently in the metagame.
Sure.
Against Zoo, useless. But there's nothing new. Nothing changed from the past. Like, there's not a single way of killing a minion in Zoo unless there was a version with the Sea Giants, right? But that's blast from the past. Then we have the matchup against Druid, Archon Giants. Okay, right?
Yep.
There is a target.
Yep.
Then we have Control Warrior, a lot of targets, right? And what else do we have in the metagame? Shaman, no targets, basically.
Not too many, yeah.
Well, Ragnaros.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to bring up, like, Ragnaros is the one card that maybe might want you to bring that big game hunter into your deck, because Ragnaros is pretty ever-present. You know, it's in Tempo Mage, it's in mid-range Shaman, it's in basically any aggressive tempo deck as a finisher these days, so that probably is the nod that he wants that big game hunter in there to just always be able to deal with Ragnaros. And outside of that, Arcane Giants, if he picks those up, then that's just an added bonus, really.
Yeah, that's true. But now we see that Spartacus has actually an insane opening hand. He has a weapon and an Alexstrasza's champion. Which one do you favor? Because I would actually say that Alexstrasza's champion would have been a better choice in this case. If you want to use Alexstrasza's champion as a means of trading with your opponent, then trading with a one-attack minion is actually the best outcome, right?
Yeah, I would agree. So in that situation, he wouldn't be weak to, say, Knife Juggler Coin 1-drop, which is one of the few ways that Zoo would have to counterplay in that situation. I think the only reason you would choose to hold back the Alexstrasza's champion is not to give your opponent an early Soulfire target, so they can't potentially high-roll the early Silverware Golem and just go from there. You know, this way, like, Zoo, unless they're playing Ooze, has no real way to interact with your weapon. They do have some small ways to interact with the board if they get that kind of draw together, but all things considered, I think I like the champion a little bit more there as well.
But at the same time, it's weaker against Imp boss, right? Because then you leave a minion that can be traded with that Imp, and still a lot of control is left for the Zoo player, which is something that you don't want to see, especially when you are playing a version of the Dragon, of the Warrior, that has a lot of endgame dragons, and you needed to cut something for it, right? So there might be no ghouls in this deck, and we see a Forbidden Ritual. That's a card I didn't see for a long time in any Zoo list.
So I've started to see it come out in some people's lists that I've been looking at in the last few days, just as a single copy, just to come back in. I think Zoo is a deck that really does get refined on a card-by-card basis over time. It's been around for so long now that, you know, making huge sweeping changes to Zoo is really pretty difficult, but what happens is really over a period of days and weeks and months, a card gets tweaked here. You know, most lists have now gone down to like one Darkshire Librarian, for example, because two of them seem clunky, and Forbidden Ritual is one of the cards that can come in to replace that. Abusive Sergeant, another card on the list that you can bring in, but yeah, I mean, this could potentially, double Juggler, Forbidden Ritual, and Soulfire in the hand. This could all just potentially add up to a ton of burst damage.
This is very explosive, that's true, and fortunately for Spartacus, he has options when it comes to curving out. He has a turn 4 play with 2 cards, which is insane. He can also pick up let's say, a safety button. Alexstrasza can reset his health to 15 after being very, let's say, open to attack with his weapons, or just being open to attacks from his opponent, and getting just a really good brawl on the board. But at the same time, that's an interesting choice.
It is. I'm not sure about the Fairy Dragon, because primarily, my reasoning here is you really want a dragon to just hold in your hand for a long time, because from here, you can go Blackwing Corruptor on 5, Bookworm on 6, but that Bookworm requires a dragon to activate it. So you actually don't mind having a big clunky dragon in your hand, just activating everything. So
which fits the game plan anyway, right? Because you know you will be targeted. There's a huge red target on your forehead, and you will be getting smashed every single turn, so you will get low at some point, and then Alexstrasza is just an additional means of getting to a safe point. after stabilizing, of course. And taking the two drop instead of the Alexstrasza champion also means that you want to squeeze that in at some point in the game. And he didn't play the Thomerio on turn 4. He had also option with the Alexstrasza champion to not tell his opponent that he has a brawl in hand. So it's a very interesting approach. We're playing the Netherspell Librarian. You kind of don't tell anything to your opponent, but at the same time, I feel like you will have to play as many minions as possible with Zoo anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with that assessment. His line here is that he's probably intending to brawl sooner rather than later, and then develop his cards on a 1-by-1 basis, on a 1-for-1 basis after that. But I would have personally looked at it the other way around and said, picked the expensive dragon from the Netherspite, played Alexstrasza champion that turn to start contesting the board. Then next turn I have Blackwing Corruptor. The turn after that I have Bookworm, and then once he's through all of that, I still then have the brawl to back it all up afterwards. But
Definitely agree with that.
Spartacus's line here has got him essentially into a position where he really just kind of has to brawl now in this situation, although the Blackwing Corruptor does start to do a little bit of work. But if his plan is to start contesting the board now on this kind of 1-for-1 basis, then what has that Alexstrasza champion been doing in his hand the whole time?
Yeah, I agree. 100% agree with you. It's kind of like a mixed plan from the Spartacus right now. He was going into the full blown out brawl plan, but then he switched his mind mid-sentence, let's say like that. The pick with the Fair Dragon kinda now looks bad when you didn't play that brawl. So you can't really play a turn 6 Alexstrasza champion into Fairy Dragon into Hero Power, so you can stabilize faster, an example. Because I'm guessing that was the plan for turn 6, right?
Oh, Thomerio here, he's playing the Darkshire Councilman. I think, again, we talked about potentially these players, this is going to be the biggest stage they've ever played on. The nerves just getting to him a little bit here, missing that 1 damage buff on the Councilman, but does get the favorable outcome on the Silverware Golem from the Soulfire, but it's all somewhat of a formality with the brawl coming out here.
Now it looks like a perfect brawl, but the thing is, that would have not happened if the Soulfire outcome had been different, and there would still be a reasonable threat from Thomerio in his hand. So it's actually kind of unfortunate that he got the Golem. Sorry, the Golem.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, if the Councilman were to win here, Knife Juggler Forbidden Ritual as a follow-up is an enormous amount of damage, so close. Second to last minion out of the pile, but still 3 more damage coming in here. Forbidden Ritual as a refill alongside that Knife Juggler. He's pushing so much damage.
It is seriously a lot. When you think about it, oh, he's going for the tap.
That, again, very much surprises me. I think having just seen the brawl there, you can go for the throat. Now, remember, from Thomerio's situation here, he hasn't seen a Revenge, a Whirlwind, a Ravaging Ghoul, whatever he's playing. You'd have to be intuitive and make the read and say, okay, my opponent's had to fit all these Dragon cards into his deck, because you've seen the Netherspite Historian come out, but the normal mentality of playing against Control Warrior in this spot, you'll be looking for that Ghoul, looking for that Revenge to come out before you start using Forbidden Ritual here. So I think he's decided just to go with the rest of his hand. This is 1 refill. When this goes down, he then has Forbidden Ritual for another refill. And if all of that doesn't work, Doomguard is just coming up the back and clearing everything up afterwards.
But at the same time, what you said is actually very true, but when the current situation in the zoo also kind of changed the way you use the life tabs, because you have more discard in your arsenal, so sometimes you even tap before you play something for discarding, right? So which was something that was kind of like a joke, running joke before introduction of the Silverware Golem, before introduction of the Librarian into the deck, and now I feel like in this matchup you actually might tap less and just be more aggressive, because getting a Darkshire Librarian in an empty hand is insane, an example.
Now he's actually decided just to go ahead and discard the Forbidden Ritual just to get the pressure of the Doomguard in play. Felt that maybe this was slipping away from him as Spartacus made the push back for the board control, managed to grab hold of it a little bit with the double punch of the Alexstrasza's champion and the Blackwing Corruptor. So just decided he needed the immediacy of that Doomguard in this situation. I like the rest of this damage going face. Definitely a very clear lethal setup here. And there is a Deathwing in this Dragon Warrior.
That is a huge minion. That is a huge minion, but doesn't really help right now. You have 8 mana. What you can do is basically... not that much.
Yeah, you're 1 mana off from Bookworm, the 1/3 armor up, shield slam, and then trade into the Doomguard.
You need to go for the Twilight Guardian instead. Twilight Guardian, hero power, shield block, heal the Flame Imp, gain basically 3 life from the shield slam, and hope that the opponent won't have an easy way to go through that taunt.
Yeah, well, now you have Deathwing in hand, you have a plan, right? Your plan is just use these cards on anything. It doesn't matter how little value that I have. Over the next 2 turns, get as much value out of these cards as I possibly can, and then try and get that big turn 10 stabilization with Deathwing. So based on that, I do like that use of the Shield Slam on the Flame Imp. Not a great target, but of course necessary. But wow! That is 6 damage at max that can go face here. The perfect trade with the Argus is set up, but he may even decide to use the Soulfire to trade here. Hold on to that 6/8 Doomguard at full health, because he didn't see an Execute come out from his opponent on the previous turn, so maybe that 6/8 on his own is just good enough to get him there, in which case this trade actually liked this play a lot.
Okay, I see where you're coming from. But at the same time, I was evaluating just shooting the Soulfire into the Blackwing Technician in this case, because you know that you will still have more threats than your opponent will have answers, most likely.
Sure.
And even if you consider Deathwing, I mean, your opponent can be playing Deathwing, but might not be playing Deathwing.
Sure.
You still have 1 more turn before that, right?
Yes.
So, interesting choice. How many options are there to deal 3 damage? There's an additional Alex Rosa's champion that you have to take into consideration. So the Blackwing Technician and Alex Rosa's champion trade into the Doomguard.
Yep.
But that's basically it, right?
Yeah, that's
you
pretty
can't
much
use the weapon.
They're unlikely to be playing Bash in this kind of build.
Yeah.
You would expect the weapon doesn't work, as you said. So you ruled out Execute from your opponent's play last turn. So yeah, 1 card in the deck that really stops this being able to get through. And this single taunt in the way means that he needs to gain the armor here just to not die from that single 2/3 on board. But asking Zoo just to do 2 damage here is not a big ask at all. Abusive Sergeant, as we mentioned, less common as a double copy in the deck, but he just needs any buffer here outside of Direwolf Alpha, really.
And again, we see Postle's Villager being the answer to that turn, right? So unfortunately, no more buffs for Thomerio. He is 2 damage short, and now there's, unfortunately for him, he will lose the Doomguard to the second Twilight Guardian. But he is still pushing damage.
He is, and Silver Golem, I'm sure, is going to come down here. That mere moment of hesitation from Thomerio there, I think he's actually thinking about Deathwing, because I can't imagine any other world where you wouldn't just slam that thing on the board for the extra board presence. And now this game is probably just going to come down to a Deathwing. He puts his opponent on just Soulfire or Doomguard off the top to win the game.
To be honest, I think that the Deathwing is actually the best answer. I'm thinking about just the dragon to kill the ghoul, trade your own dragon into the Argus, and leave the 1/1 around. You can still build up armor.
Sure.
And if you just play the Deathwing, you don't have a single answer to the board, right? Your opponent is drawing 2 cards. So, and he's not gonna die from 1 swing from the Deathwing. So if he draws 2 minions, and you can't stop the second one going into your face, next turn you lose.
Sure, I buy that. You die to the same things off the top, right? If you go up to 4 armor, so the Soulfire and the Doomguard, they still kill you. And in this scenario, you're still just left with just the Bookworm on the board, right? So kind of the same scenario. What happens if they just tap and play 2 minions? You still only have that 1 Bookworm on the board.
Yeah, but you have still Deathwing in your hand.
Sure, no, I
and
totally
then you can
it.
play Deathwing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense, but I mean, like, you're kind of just delaying the situation for another turn, I guess, unless you're able to set up the lethal with the Deathwing after the initial turn, after 2 life taps. Oh, Librarian into Librarian is very, very nice. It does mean that the armor up out of range is good enough to survive the board, but this is so many draws. This is so many potential draws here for a Soulfire, Doomguard, anything to be able to get this job done. Abusive Sergeant straight away is enough to get it done. The first draw could have been a buff. Even if he whiffed, he could have traded in the second 3/2, still hit Soulfire, still hit Doomguard. So he had so many potential outs in that spot.
What do you think about keeping the Alex Rosa's champion in hand? Would you just mind playing it on board? Because you then kind of gain the charge anyway, but you have 2 attack instead of 3.
Right. Yeah, I think I would have liked to see it on the board there, but it turns out to be a formality in the end. I think the more important decision point there is the one that you argued against, playing the Bookworm there instead of the Deathwing. Maybe on reflection, I think I like your line a little bit more. You do get that potential to just delay proceedings for 1 more turn, so maybe the decision to just Deathwing a turn too early there was what cost him that first game, but...
I think it was just important to have, to end the game with the Deathwing, basically, by playing him and attacking once. If you need to attack twice, basically when you're at 2 HP, you are on... you bet on drawing a shield block.
Yes.
Into... what else can you play in this deck? I'm exactly not sure because there's a Dragon Control, right? But you want to have survivability. Sorry, it's a hard word for me. After you play Deathwing. Because otherwise Deathwing serves as a trading minion. And that's not something you want to do with a 12-12.
So let's look at it. He was at 19, so if he'd have played the 3-6 on board, cleared everything else, he would have tapped himself down to 17, gone face, then your 3-6 connects, puts him to 14, and then you jam Deathwing.
Yes. And then
so you're in the position where he cannot life tap, or else your Deathwing ends the game.
Exactly.
When you put it like that, I think your play makes sense. That may have been where it all slipped away there from Spartacus, but it's Thomerio, the absolute underdog, the absolute newcomer as far as we're concerned, newcomer to my eyes. Clearly not a newcomer to the game, though, because look at the amount of shiny golden cards this man has.
He has more golden cards than me.
I mean, I'm a massive role player, so I have everything golden. I'm just saying.
Really?
Yeah.
You have every single card?
Like everything playable golden, yeah.
Okay. I never really put attention to that.
Yeah.
I just play on different servers.
Fair enough.
But by the way, that's a shaman.
It is a shaman, yeah.
Yeah, that means someone didn't ban it. And that someone is Spartacus.
It is indeed. And he may be immediately about to regret that decision because Zoo can struggle against mid-range shaman now at the best of times. Spirit Claws, Maelstrom Portal, Lightning Storm, all of these things have come together to be the perfect storm of answers. And the perfect hand of answers is sitting in Thomerio's hand right now. Has the Kobold Geomancer, that amnesiac tech that we saw come out at BlizzCon, the young Savage slapping that Kobold Geomancer back in the meta. I mean, I say back in the meta for probably the first time ever.
No, it was the first time ever. It was still playable in beta.
Was it really?
Yeah,
Kobold
Rogue was playing with Kobolds.
Wow.
In addition to Thalnos.
Fair enough.
But that was like 3 years ago, so no one cares.
Yeah.
But yeah, look at that. Now even Lightning Storm is being drawn. So that's actually insane. You have Maelstrom Portal with the Kobold, which deals with most of the minions that this will play, especially in turns 1 to 3, apart from the Imgimbers, of course, which fortunately for Spartacus is the case that he has on curve actually when he's starting. So that's very important, but it's still not in a good spot. What do you think about the Shaman here?
I was about to say, I think this turn will tell me a lot about Thomerio as a player, and I've actually got the answer that I wanted to see. I think a lot of people would have made the mistake of Kobold Geomancer and trade into the 2-2. Just to pick up the better value trade. I think this is for sure the best line. I think Hero Power is a play that some people would have made too. But this line, get the 2/2/3s on board. Next turn, you have your 1 mana allocated already. You get to hit something with your Spirit Claws, re-equip your second Spirit Claws, and you still have that Kobold in hand with those 2 AoE options. So test number 1, at least for me, passed by Thomerio. This guy is starting to impress me a little bit.
I actually never thought that you can actually play the Kobold at that turn because
it's just not legal. It's an illegal card. You
Yeah,
can't play it.
you need to keep it for the Maelstrom Portal or for the Lightning Storm. It's just so much value. Unless, of course, you draw the Thalnos. Then you don't need the Kobold right now, and the Kobold is better on board than Thalnos, right? So it makes sense. But in this situation, I would never play the Kobold at all. I would rather consider the Hero Power than playing the Spirit Walls, but I definitely agree with the Spirit Walls because it puts you in a good spot when it comes to the board control situation right away.
Absolutely. I mean,
And it's good against Imgimbers as well.
He's going to choose not to attack here into the 2-3. I guess there's no real reason to it. He's saying that by not making this attack, he's actually gaining himself 2 life because then the trade has to happen on his opponent's turn and that minion doesn't get to attack face. But unbeknownst to him, he's actually kind of given Thomerio a turn here because the Spirit Claws attack turned out to not in fact be that good. And he's given a potential lightning bolt here, although there's also the option to just double trade into the Imp Gang boss and then use the Spirit Claws on one of the 1/1s that's generated and then re-equip Spirit Claws at the end of that. These early tussles for board control between two very tempo-based, early game-based decks, there's so many minute decisions that go into these turns, and this is very often where the games are won and lost, and then people 6 or 7 turns down the line, you know, a Lightning Storm 50-50 happens, a Ragnaros 50-50 happens, and they start to blame that. They say, oh, I lost to a Rag flip, I lost to a Lightning Storm roll.
But it turns
somewhere
out,
in here, you've made a mess of that game and put yourself in a weaker position than you could be.
True, completely agree with that, and I think you said there's a lot of decisions, I agree, but I think what is the most important thing is what you need to think about what's the worst outcome that can happen on turn 4. So when you look just at the board, the worst outcome is Defender Vargas. So what do you do against Defender Vargas? Do you play around it? Do you just start to trading to trade with the minions? They're like your proposition to trade both wolves into the in-game boss and then kill one of those guys still leaves 2 minions open.
Yes.
But those minions buffed by the Defender Vargas are still trading into the wolves, and there's a free one remaining on the board that dies to your Spirit Claws in the upcoming turn or to the Maelstrom Portal. So it's still a good outcome. So whatever happens, Defender Vargas is not a big deal anymore.
Right.
So then you need to take into other considerations into under your, under the microscope. And basically, I think keeping the Engangos alive is great when you have an answer to the 1/1s, and you have the answers with the Maelstrom Portal. So give your opponent time to spawn those minions and just get back on the board, try to get back into the board.
Yeah, so Spartacus looks like he was just considering the attack into Argus play, just after generating the 1/1, use the Argus to buff both minions. He's instead going to go a little bit wider here, start to ask his first preliminary questions about whether there is an AoE in the hand from Thomerio, and Thomerio has him covered quite handily with multiple options here, so...
And I would love to see the Kobold of the Maelstrom Portal right now.
I think that just ends the game. Kobold, Maelstrom Portal, you have the Spirit Claws to trade out 1 minion that doesn't die, and then you have the 2/3 on board to trade with the remaining 1/1. That is 3 live minions in play, plus...
plus a Trog.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Plus a Trog, or injured Kvaldir if you're dreaming.
Yeah, that's even better.
And that is a situation, 3 minions against none, that Zoo really, really struggles to come back against. So again, absolutely loving this play from Thomerio. He's continuing to impress me so far, assuming the Maelstrom Portal is going to come out now, but having seen the Kobold come down, absolutely sure it's going to happen.
Let's see what will be the outcome of the Portal. Taking his time. And... surprise, surprise, it's actually even better against Zoo. Because the Young Priestess builds up your board at least twice.
Sure.
And that's insane.
Librarian pickup can be used to cycle off that Malkazar's Imp, and I think it's going to need to be done because Spartacus here needs to pick up Soulfire's Doom Guards. He needs to pick up cards that impact the board. And look how relevant that Priestess turned out to be, because Demon Fire is a source of 2 damage. The Kobold getting that buff means that the spell damage is going to hang around. It looks like Spartacus might even be considering...
buffing the minion.
Buffing on the Imp, just to make sure it doesn't get discarded to the Librarian.
Which kind of makes sense, because then your minion contests every single minion from the Shaman. But it's going to be kind of sad when it gets hexed. Because it's a big minion. I think that's the biggest minion that you can hex unless it's a Doomsday. So
look how aggressively he's been playing his hand this game. He's not told a single time. That is still a 6 mana thing from below.
I like how we adapted the way he was playing the Shaman, because that's the way what you need to do. That's usually the way you will need to win against the Zoo, right? You need to take off, like, start putting board control from the beginning of the game against the Zoo, and that means you don't have time for the hero powers. I like that a lot.
The hero power goes through here. I honestly didn't hate just Lightning Storm Spirit Claws that turn just to clear the board, because sure, you know, your brain tells you Lightning Storm is one of the most important cards in the matchup, but
you already made a play.
Right, Maelstrom Portal was already good enough to get you in this position where Zoo can't really climb back onto this board, so you can just start pushing for damage and limiting the amount of time that he has to really draw into those power cards. So Wouldn't have hated to see that come down here. He still has a very tidy clear available to him with the Lightning Bolt and the trade from the Young Priestess. So I'm totally on board with this as well. He's actually going to give up the Taunt instead, having now rolled the Taunt Totem, which takes Doomguard out of the equation still, so he doesn't need that. Spirit Wolf chooses to value the Young Priestess over that Taunt, and completely agree with that as well. Yep. That Young Priestess has already wreaked havoc and will continue to do so.
When you think about it, it's getting to the point when Young Priestess is almost like Faldir.
Sure, yeah.
Right? It gave 2 HP points. That's basically a 2-3 minion.
Yep.
And it will get better even. Probably won't matter at some point, because the game is coming to be just, you know, done. 2 direwolves, not really something that you want to draw, especially when you're off curve. So 6 mana viable, but your free cards are 7 mana. You can't really build good board control. And even if you play the Councilman with the direwolf, you know that next turn you will actually have to hit the Taunt Totem with your Councilman. So your direwolf will need to trade with minions, and there's a 2-3 minion waiting already for that situation. That's sad. It's just sad to see. You're just giving away cards for 0 value. That's not something you want to do as Zoo.
Yeah, nothing in this situation is looking good as the Zoo, because he's had to develop Direwolf just into an active Spirit Claws, already spell damage buff. That feels terrible. The fact that the Councilman is just going to have to deal with that Taunt Totem, that feels terrible. The fact that spell damage, Maelstrom Portal, and Lightning Bolt, and Spirit Claws, all of that stuff was in your Shaman opponent's hand in one of the most important games of Hearthstone you've ever played, with national pride and 3,000 euros on the line. That definitely does not feel good. Nothing really going Spartacus' way right now.
That's true, and there's a Fire Elemental for the next turn as well. Wow. So actually, can you consider just going face, ignoring the Councilman?
Looks like he's just going to trade it out here, just say, all right, Young Priestess, your work is done. You've carried me this far, but I do not need you anymore. But actually, a little bit of a reduction in the power of his board right there, meaning that Soulfire is actually a really big deal to start to climb Spartacus back into this game. But he needs another big draw here. Imgang Boss is not it.
I mean, it's actually a big draw.
It is,
but,
sure.
But what we needed is something that you can play on the board right now.
Yes, he needed Librarian, he needed like a Flame Imp, just a sticky 1-drop, maybe Possessed Villager number 2, something that he could start to build a platform with. Didn't get it, picked up the Imgang Boss, and now Fire Ellie can potentially crush out this game, although I think he's picked up either Flame Tongue or Manatide Totem.
That was a Manatide Totem.
Manatide, so he can go Manatide Thing from below this turn now if he'd like to.
It's definitely sweet and gives you more time to develop the board. And we can judge already from the previous turn that his plan will be playing Manatide Totem, right? To be consistent with his game plan. So I like how he plays right now. The Fire Elemental would have been better if he would have spared the Councilman last turn and just went out with damage.
Right.
So I would rather favor that. But I like when I like when players are sticking to their plan.
Yeah, we saw that in the previous series as well, where Death Boost really established a very safe line in the Hunter matchup. Decided he was going to start sending 8/8s into small minions, but the important thing is that he followed it through all the way to the end. He kept that plan consistent, and it's what we're seeing here from Thomerio as well. Manatide starting to draw some cards here. That Storm still in hand, the Hex still in hand, Fire Elemental backing it all up as well. It's really hard to imagine a board state that Zoo can generate that Thomerio doesn't have the answer to.
That's true, and the Flame Tongue Totem will actually be a huge help here as well. Without the Voidwalker, it actually had lethal, right? Because that's 11, 13, 16. Yes. Is it still lethal? No.
No, he can't fit in everything. Just he needs the Flame Tongue Totem and the Fire Elemental to go through, so he doesn't have the mana left to cast the Lightning Storm. But he is very much getting there. Definitely would not surprise me to see Hex. You can Hex Storm Flame Tongue Totem here and put your opponent to the point where Fire Elemental is guaranteed lethal from hand on the following turn.
I like that.
That's probably your strongest line, because at that point, yes, you've used a Hex, yes, you've used a Lightning Storm, but hey, who cares? Like, the game's just over, right? Because there's no way he's generating a board that you need to deal with when you just Fire Elemental him in the face next turn.
That's the point of the game, where you can use the hexes for targets that are really usually smaller of what you usually play on. Because, as you said, the game is usually going to the end, and you don't care what you do. You just want to close out the game as soon as possible, and your opponent is actually helping you because of the hero power. You know that when you're ahead, the hero power doesn't really matter that much from the Warlock side, because it's like you're getting a hero power from a hunter for free. You don't care about your opponent's cards because you know that Zoo has a problem getting back on the board. There's no more implosions in the deck. They can't really roll something that can kill a minion and build the minions on the board. So that's basically it.
Yep, Thomerio looked at it the other way, decided he'd rather just generate his board presence, push through the same amount of damage, Fire Elemental on the board this way, so he's just asking for his board state to be answered. No such answer for Spartacus, and Thomerio, the player, the absolute underdog, the dark horse, the man that none of us could find any info on, he is strolling his way towards the grand finals right now.
So far, I'm liking the way he's playing the game.
I do too, yeah.
I'm very impressed, so let's see what will be the third game of the semifinals here at the Nordic Championship, and maybe we'll see a 3-0. We have seen the first semifinal, a full match between those two players, so DevBooz and Janetsky had a 3-2 result for DevBooz, but it seems like it might be a clean sweep here.
It might be, yeah, but Conquest is a hard format to 3-0 in because when you come down to your third deck, the last remaining deck that you have to win with, your opponent has their entire lineup available to choose from. So if they want to stick it out for the long haul and pick their best matchup first, then you can start to get in a mess. And you see that's exactly what has happened. It is the Druid remaining to win with for Thomerio, and Spartacus has just instantly queued up that Zoo, which is probably just the strongest matchup in the game against the Druid.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's, historically speaking, always the best matchup.
Yes.
Against the Druid, because historically speaking, again, Druid has a problem to get back on the board, the same way Zoo has problems to get back on the board.
Right.
Because they are lacking any kind of spell that is just destroying the opponent's board and building the board at the same time. And the only thing that Druid can do is innervate big minions before your opponent is playing bigger minions, or just hoping for double swipe to him, or a Azure Dragon to swipe. That's like the thing that you need to get in this matchup.
Both of these players right now, though, with pretty crazy openers. The curve from Zoo, sure, he's hit double 1 into 2, but you can be expected to do that reasonably consistently the way that you build Zoo. But importantly, the one drop that he hit was Flame Imp, which is the one drop that you want in the matchup because it gets the beatdown going the quickest. So that, and then facing up against this hand of Innovates and Removal and Raven Idols from Thomerio is exactly what he wants as well. So we're seeing two power draws interacting with each other.
Unfortunately, we don't see what is the discovery option from the Idol, but it's a Mark of the Wild.
Interesting. I wonder what he passed up. I mean, he is with this hand reducing the cost of that Arcane Giant very rapidly, so he's going to be living in a world where he can get a Taunted Arcane Giant on the board fairly soon, but still, there is a lot of options I definitely would have taken over that. Swipe for one, Wrath for another, Living Roots number 2, all of those would have been snap-picked. Possibly Feral Rage as well, so I'd be interested to see what the other spells were that he passed up. They must have been fairly poor options overall.
Yeah, probably yes, and it's interesting to talk about the Feral Rage, because in this matchup, usually it's the best answer against an Imcam boss.
Yes.
So it's very needed, but it's not a card that usually you will take, that you will use as a heal. So most likely just an offensive card. You will use it as a weapon, a one-time use weapon. But so far he didn't have a good, target for it. I'm really interested by the tap, because that means he is planning to play the Doomguard on turn 5 and just want to have as many cards in the hand as possible, just to not discard the the Soulfire, or to play the Soulfire before turn 5 so you don't discard the Doomguard.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely nods to the fact that he's going to try and use both of those cards here. We may see the Soulfire just used. Azure Drake is just such a clean target for it that, tapping again here, Soulfiring the Drake, playing another 1-drop afterwards and just carrying on looks like a pretty powerful turn in this case. Is Thomerio considering whether he needs to innovate Mark of the Wild on this Azure Drake right now?
That would be an interesting choice. It gets your it gets your Arcane Giants to 7 mana, so it's still not playable next turn. I would consider playing it this turn if I would be able to play it Giant next turn.
Yeah, I agree
But
with
he's
that.
actually
It looks
going
like
for
he
it.
is going to go for it. Just try and ask some bigger questions with that Azure Drake. Knows that it does just go down to a single Soulfire here, and I'm honestly not a huge fan of this decision. I think it's way too easy to chew through this Drake here in any reasonable world. Any hand you might expect your opponent to have. You know, Abusive
Even the
Sergeant,
board.
Dire Wolf. Right, exactly. But like, what I'm saying is like he can kill this and still gain tempo, right?
Yeah.
Like Soulfire, Abusive Sergeant, all this stuff. If that happens, you're just sat with a hand with not a lot going on. So I think you just had to kind of grin and bear it for maybe 1 or 2 more turns there. Try and swing the board and then get that big Arcane Giant taunt down instead.
Agree about that. And this card is a Defender Vargas, no harm done basically, because you still have a second one in your hand. And as you said, there's still board control made by Spartacus, and he seems to be on top of his game in this match.
Yeah, so the Voidwalker is going to come down here, and as I said, Thomerio just not really looking at any kind of pretty play in his hand right now, just that Feral Rage, which is being blocked off by the Voidwalker. Living Roots is a good pickup now. Any cheap spell that he draws essentially has an innovate function to it because he has both Arcane Giants in hand. This Living Roots over the course of the game actually costs -1 mana. So it's a pretty effective card when you look at it like that.
It's a good draw when you have 2 Arcane Giants in your hand.
Yeah.
That's definitely true. And it seems like a second time we'll see the Living Roots to be just a removal for the Flame Imp. The second one that we have seen this in this match. But the Feral Rage, I feel like you need to remove the minion. Like, you don't want to see even a Voidwalker just on the board. And you want to also have the option to attack with your hero power next turn into the 1/1. So you want to kill the Voidwalker, get that out of the way. Next turn is Arcane Giant into killing the 1/1. And that Giant now can be a saving grace from the board because it can trade with a Doomguard. It can just kill any single minion, and you will still have the hero power to kind of take back the control of the game. Oh, he went for the live game.
Gained the armor and still attacked into the 1/2. That's interesting. I was going to bring up the point of gaining 8 there. I think that was valid, but the point you made about wanting to be able to hero power the 1/1 on this turn, I think that really swayed it for me, where maybe using the Feral Rage offensively as the one-use weapon, as you put it, was probably a little bit better, but the attack there really confuses me as well. After gaining the life, choosing to put that 1 into the Voidwalker as well.
So basically he's bluffing that he has a swipe. He wants to set up a good swipe target. And I think that's basically it. Not a explanation for that. Is there any card left in the deck that can deal 2 damage?
I mean, the Living Roots have been used already, right? So
yeah, 2 Living Roots was used.
Like setting up potential draw of Moonfire maybe, so Moonfire hero power can now take care of that 1/3. It's playing towards draws in his deck, I guess. So it's hard to see it paying off here. And that double Arcane Giant hand, because he chose to use his innovates on that Azure Drake and not pair them together with the Arcane Giant, they have just got a little bit stuck. And now the Wrath draw. Wrath cycle hero power on the 1/2 does not leave him enough mana to generate a giant afterwards. So looks like it is just going to have to be Wrath and a giant unless he really feels like he needs to cycle to win this game.
Yeah, and the problem is that if he Wraths, he will need to kill the Voidwalker, because otherwise your giant might be in a position when he needs to attack into a 1/2 Voidwalker next to it.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's the case is because they use the Feral Rage for life gain instead of killing the Voidwalker in that turn. So it's kind of uncomfortable right now because you would like to kill the 2/2 instead, but I feel like you need to actually kill the Voidwalker here.
How about you just play the 8/8 and hero power the Voidwalker again, and then next turn,
That's a good option.
Next turn you're setting up yourself to be able to do a reasonable amount of things with the draws that you have. Barongeddon being picked up here is huge though. When I said maybe he feels like he needs to cycle to pick up an additional answer from his deck, Barongeddon is one of those huge tools that can get the job done. And now, maybe if there isn't a massive power turn coming out from his opponent, he's looking at this Geddon in hand and thinking, maybe this is good enough to get there for me.
But now we have the answer. Why did he attack into the Voidwalker?
We put it to 2 health. He was setting up a Geddon draw, right?
So, so he was setting up for the Baron Geddon. I won't draw in the entire deck, but it would have worked if he would have drawn that. So now there's a lot of damage that can go through, but at the same time he's at 25 HP because he used the he used the Pharaoh Rage for the life gain.
Yep.
No, mistake. It's an armor gain.
An armor gain, indeed.
6 damage, 8 damage to the face. You can either kill the giant, but that doesn't really cut it, right? Every single taunt minion that you play right now into the game buys you a lot of time because most likely your opponent, the druid player, will not have an option to clear those taunt minions. But it feels like it actually be the case because the Baron Geddon will just be a huge swing.
I mean, it's reasonable. The minions that have been played here, the Imgang boss that are down, him playing the extra 1/3, the Defender of Argus being there as well means that it's not as effective as it could be, but still, it definitely creates a huge dent in this board state and asks a question to Zoo, importantly, to say, hey, do you have the damage to just go past this, or do you have to trade some of your board into it? And with the abusive Doomguard in hand, that's already 12 damage that can go face, with the Baron Geddon threatening to deal another 2. But if he does choose to go face here, there's just 15 damage on the board coming back the other way. So I think he is forced now to trade some of this board state down.
I mean, he's dead if he just leaves that board state, because then there's 2 damage coming from the Baron Geddon and 1 from the hero power. So he's just dead. He can. By the way, a small misplay from the druid player last turn, because he attacked with the giant into the Voidwalker, which gave him additional damage, but still a 1/1 was spawned. And that was a full board, so he wouldn't attack. A 1/1 will have been left.
Yes.
But with a taunt.
Have 1 more health. He'd have 1 more health on his giant for the sake of there being a 1/1 without taunt, or 1/1 with taunt on the board. So, not necessarily strictly wrong, right? But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, the difference between the taunt and the staple 1/1 probably are not too huge. But he is still staring down the barrel of a gun here. He can trade out the Doomguard, and as you mentioned, that 1 health is actually pretty relevant because he would have been able to have his Arcane Giant survive if that trade had happened. But still then facing down 6 more damage in play. I think he needs to find a way to try and set up some kind of counter-punch lethal here, but that is just Arcane Giant and the Mire Keeper. But he's going to go ahead and gain the 1 here, which is interesting to me.
Okay, I was thinking just developing 2 4-drops. Killing the Doomguard is potentially way better than just using your hero power and playing Emperor. Because still, it doesn't matter if you get your cards cheaper from your hand, because you're still behind on board.
Yep.
So having a 3/3, a 2/2, and an 8/8 on board gives you more space to develop the game, or maybe just end it, than using the hero power and just putting the Emperor. Interesting choice.
Yeah, this hero power definitely does confuse me a little bit. I think the board presence is necessary. As you said, it gives you a lot more flexibility just to fight for the board, but also more importantly, it just threatens lethal. If you're backing that up with a swipe, for example, in your hand, then you can potentially just be ending the game. You can put the fear into the Zoo player, make the Zoo trade into you, but this singular 8/8 on the board is probably not going to be good enough to make that happen.
But at the same time, you can see that Thomerio is actually blaming himself right now for the play. He's visibly just talking to himself, shaking his head. So it seems like he thinks it was a misplay to use the hero power, because he knows he is in a bad spot right now.
Yeah, and now Spartacus has kind of a similar decision really as to whether he overdevelops in this state. Because if he plays the Flame Imp, he puts him down to 13, which means he will be dead to a top deck swipe. And chooses to hold on to it for that reason. But does this open any windows? There is the swipe. Boys and girls, decisions matter in Hearthstone. Who would have thought it?
Who would have thought, right? But now let's see, what are the options? You can use the hero power, attack into the Imgang boss, spawn a 1/1, get 2 damage back, you're on 2 HP. You can attack with the giant to the another Imgang boss, spawn a 1/1, kill the imp, and then swipe and leave a 1/1 on your opponent's board when you are at 2. Is that okay?
Sure, it seems valid. There's definitely a variety of ways here that you can leave your opponent short of lethal. It's just about how you generate a board so you're threatening to end the game next turn, because this status quo of the Druid just barely hanging on every single turn, this can't continue. At some point, and to be perfectly honest, that point was last turn, he needed to set up a board that actually threatened to end the game on his side. So he needs to make sure he's generating his own board presence here. He can do that. Now just by hero powering, he puts himself 1 out of lethal range again, and then I'm sure we will see the Maya Keeper come down. So now all of a sudden he has that 13 power in play that he probably should have had last turn. And now the decision time is on Spartacus as the Zoo as to whether he needs to tap. But
That's
Demon Fire is going to
will finish
end
the
game, buffing the Imp-Gang boss. Spartacus gets himself on the board.
So it still would have been possible if the small imp would have been on the board instead of the big imp, because both of them are demons. And the interesting thing is that a soul demon fire in that deck, or maybe he's playing 2, because we have seen 1 in the previous game.
Right, yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, originally that list was playing 2, and you do have those extra 1-drop demons now, but again, a single copy I have seen start rotating back in some people's builds, so interesting decision from Spartacus to run that in his Zoo.
Correct, and it turns out it won him the game. Although I think that Thomerio made, well, I don't want to say mistake, right? But it might have cost him the game. Not playing additional minion on the turn when he just played hero power and giant instead put him in an uncomfortable situation. But now we'll see the druid versus the hunter. It's a hunter with a hunter's mark as well.
It is.
So that's actually very important in this matchup, when every single minion that you will see will probably be a viable target for it.
Yeah, it looks like this is a very aggressive build coming out here. Hunter's Mark, Argent Squire, not cards that we've seen recently as the Hunter builds have been moving towards more mid-rangey stuff. So this is going to be a pretty decent matchup against the Druid. You can just go too fast for the Druid player, just push through too much damage early, take all those big late game plays out of the equation. But with the Innovate 2 Nourishes Raven Idol in hand, again, Thomerio is hitting a good hand here to be able to counteract aggressive decks.
Yes, but the cat trick is actually perfect play for turn 2. When you know there's facing a Druid player that has almost an entire deck of spells, there's a chance that he will just use a top-decked Wild Growth that turn, right? He didn't have it on turn 2, he might have it on turn 3. Raven Idols are great targets for that turn as well, so a lot of options, and wow, he's just going nuts with the Raven Idols.
Yep, second Nourish in hand, so using the first Nourish for mana, I definitely like, and it just has the added bonus of being able to hit those 2 Raven Idols for him this turn. Start picking up some removal options. Living Roots will be the absolute dream here, because next turn he would be able to Living Roots the cat and play the second Nourish in the same turn, or in this case now even possibly Force of Nature. So Living Roots now has maybe got even better if he can find it from this second Raven Idol.
Too bad that the Power of the Wild doesn't have charge anymore. Right? But then it would have been for 6 mana. Doesn't matter, because it's turn 6 next turn.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he would have taken old school Force of Nature here all day. It would be really, really effective. Even if Animal Companion came down here, he could go Force of Nature, 2 trees into, say, a Misha, and then one remaining one into the cat. But hey, let's stop living in pre-nerf nightmare world. We play standard now, and Shamans are our new overlords. And he's going for a Claw here. Same deal. Same deal, honestly. This is for sure the right pick. Living Roots would have been a little bit preferable, but Claw definitely gets the job done reasonably well.
The Roots would have been better if he would top deck a Fandral, an example.
Sure.
That is like way better. But Claw makes almost the same thing here possible. So very nice. Feral Raid already in hand. Interesting, because that, like a Fandral draw would have been insane actually next turn, because then you can play Feral Rage and Fandral at the same time. And if Fandral doesn't die, you still have Nourish in your hand.
And this, Spartacus can just perhaps feel this slipping away. The one shining light in his hopes to representing his country in the finals of the Nordic Championship is that the Druid's hand is so low on options, and he's already used a Nourish. But you saw him Nourish for mana, and he hasn't curved into a huge, powerful threat. So I think you are very easily capable of reading that one of those 2 remaining cards is the second Nourish, and that spells a huge problem for you at some point this game.
It might also be a very huge minion, but then Spartacus is fine with that because he has the Hunter's Mark, right?
Yes.
So he doesn't really... He's not bothered by that fact. Ooh,
Blood
Hellos
Mage
with
pickup.
Moonfire.
Blood Mage Moonfire can now take out the Secret Keeper. Oh, and actually, Blood Mage Moonfire on the remainder of the Kindly Grandmother is actually a lot better because he can value trade the Secret Keeper already. So able to trade down this board very effectively now using that. But he may even be looking to hold on to Blood Mage Swipe for the following turn. Uses the Moonfire here to take out the Fiery Bat. And now, finding out where this 1 damage goes, he'll use one of the healthy Treants to value trade into the Secret Keeper. I actually like this because the Blood Mage Swipe as a follow-up now is so powerful.
That's true. I agree about that. I was thinking about actually just killing the beast this turn, just to take it out immediately, so a kill command is not as valuable as it would have been. But actually, I think there was a lot of viable options this turn. And everything could have been easily explained that it was a good decision. Especially with this swipe already in hand.
The Cat Trick pickup, Cat Trick number 2, the only secret we've seen so far from the deck. This is an unconventional Hunter build, maybe a little bit of an old school Hunter build, but the Cat Trick's a very new school card that have come into it. But Hunter's Mark, Argent Squire, not really a build that I've seen really since Abusive Sergeant got nerfed. Argent Squire is not a card that I've seen being used in Hunter for that very reason. Argent Squire was just so powerful with Abusive Sergeant. It was basically the early game package you put into every tempo deck if you wanted to fight early game board control against Shaman and Zoo, for example. You just played Squire and Abusive in your deck, and then sometimes you could compete with them.
Yeah, that's true. I completely agree. I like the way that Thomerio played this turn because he had the Talos and Swipe for the second Cat Trick if that happened. So very nicely played. What I wanted to add on top of that, Argent Squire, is that I think that the only reason why Spartacus is playing the Argent Squire right now is because of the fact that he has Hunter's Mark, and he might also be playing Barnes in his deck.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Explosive Trap picked up here is actually a pretty big deal because that takes care of this board state quite nicely. But honestly, if you're Thomerio in this position, attack phase, Emperor, Feral Rage for armor, that is a perfectly fine turn if you ask me.
There are two options. Either you think it's not an explosive trap, it is an explosive trap, and then you play the Emperor but still keep the minions alive, so you have an option to trade in the upcoming turn when your opponent will drop some minions. Or you just go in, as you said, immediately off and just get the additional draw from the Falnos and see maybe that changes their plans as well. Both are valid. I would actually prefer to be the aggressor, so you check if that's actually maybe a freezing trap instead. Maybe it is Snake Trap. Maybe it is something else, that it's not an explosive trap, and you deal 6 damage to the face, or maybe 4 if it's a freezing trap, and you still have bow presence. You can still play the Emperor, it doesn't really change much. So, yeah, definitely agree about that.
It's like it is going to be Emperor and Wait here from Thomerio, our Norwegian representative, and it's Norway that are on the verge of going through to the finals to contest Death Boos from Sweden. That rivalry, of course, as old as time. Norway and Sweden could be what we're seeing in the grand finals here. It's all slipping away from our Danish representative, Spartacus.
No, he's using the Hunter's Mark because he wants to use the quick shot this turn? I think so.
Yeah, also just stops that Emperor from connecting with his face. And this is, I would say this is one of the dangers of, not dealing with the explosive trap, but honestly, who is going to play around Hunter's Mark at this point?
Yeah, no one. No one will do that, and at this point I think like Thomerio needs to make a move. But at the same time, that weapon is actually threatening, because it will get additional free damage.
This is actually the worst possible punish he could have received. The weapon that actually gets additional damage now out of the trap being activated, and the Hunter's Mark on the Emperor, which is just the ridiculous part that you'd have no way of considering, right? So now he's kind of bailed out of this plan. He is going to attack into the explosive trap, try and set himself up a win condition. With Feral Rage number 2, he does still have a lot of time to get this done. Maya Keeper for the token. Feral Rage, I'm sure, will gain the life again here, just while he has the time to use it. And there still needs to be a lot of damage pushed through. But has that little moment of indecision where he held back against the explosive trap, has that given Spartacus a window here for Denmark? That is the worst draw in the deck!
That's actually ridiculous. If you draw a single minion, and you play that minion, play quick shot, and get a second quick shot, that's the dream.
Yeah.
But if you draw quick shot into quick shot. That's not exactly what he wanted to see at all. Still, it's decent amount of damage. An animal companion, but do you want to play animal companion right now?
He's pressing hero power every single time. He knows what the plan is here. He is playing pure old school face hunter from this point. Needs to make sure he gets in that hero power on every turn. That Moonfire might not look like a huge pickup, but it is a huge pickup because paired with that Malagos, that puts the clock on the hunter now. He has to end the game this turn because Mali will hit the board, threatening lethal on the follow-up here.
Would you play the Moonfire right now? I would, for the 6 damage. Because if there's a second Hunter's Mark, you will lose the Malagos and the Moonfire doesn't really do much.
Yep, I like it. Freezing Trap is a whiff, so even Huffer now is only 9 damage. But the Freezing Trap may just be able to keep him alive here, depending on how he can manipulate this board. Misha is the perfect outcome for him, but he cannot now freeze that Malagos. There's no way he can take out both tokens from the Maya Keeper to be able to freeze that Mali. So he's going to be on the same draw and a dream again for next turn.
But the Druid has to use a lot of options that will finish up the game next turn.
Yep.
1 Swap is gone, 2 Raven Idols are gone, 1 Moonfire, 1 Living Roots, if I remember correctly.
I think at least 1, yeah.
And basically, what else do you have? There's a second Moonfire that will help finishing up the game here. Wrath, actually 1 Wrath is left, which can kill the Misha.
Yeah, Wrath will kill the Misha, and then you freeze the 2/2, and then you have 7 going face plus the hero power for 8. So, yeah, for sure. I mean, there are some outs here for Thomerio, no doubt. Baron Geddon.
Wait, he didn't attack with the weapon. Interesting.
He didn't attack with a weapon, no, which gives the opportunity to freeze the 2/2 here. Means Mali has to go into the 4/4. 3 damage goes to face, down to 5. The 2 more from the Baron Geddon plus the hero power means that is not lethal just yet.
And by not attacking, that's a very, in my opinion, an interesting point, an interesting situation. When both players are really low on health, so they can't spare any more time, but Spartacus opted to not attack with his weapon, although his next draw might be another weapon, and he will probably not be alive to have another turn. This might just end next turn, or this turn even. So, by not attacking this turn, he cuts some of his chances to win the game.
So again, we know this is Freezing Trap. Thomerio has no such luxury, so he has to consider all of his options here. Now, if that wasn't, for example, a Freezing Trap, then that attack of the 2/2 into the 4/4 is actually just a complete waste of everyone's time. It just dies for no reason. So he really did have to consider all his various options here. And now, Spartacus again, looking at his deck, he needs 1 card that deals, what, 6 damage in this position. That card just doesn't exist. He's used both quick shots. The quick shot into quick shot dream isn't even there.
Yeah, that's true. Wait, was that a difference for the Unleash the Hounds? 3, 6, 8 damage?
Leroy!
Oh, Leroy Jenkins, that's 11!
I wanted you to correct me, Lothar. 1 card that deals 6 damage doesn't exist. Of course it does. Leroy Jenkins.
It's a fireball on a stick.
The tracking hits it. The tracking hits the Leroy. And that 6 damage that he needs gets the job done. And Thomerio, from being 2-0 up and looking in such a confident position.
Well, what can you say? The tracking is there for a reason in that deck, right? And it cuts the cards that are not good anymore in the matchup mid-game, right? To get to those finishers. So that to that Leroy, to that kill command, to, well, Quickshot if they're still in the deck, right? So actually I like the inclusion of the tracking. There was a huge discussion some time ago that tracking is actually not a controlling type of card.
Sure.
It's just better in aggro decks, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really matter if you have a 27 card deck or 28, because the tracking discards your card from your hand. Sorry, from your deck. Interesting game.
Yeah, for sure was. And incredibly explosive finish. But Thomerio, I think, you know, this kind of works both ways, but I think he was playing significantly better towards the start of the series. And he was 2-0 up. But it's like, yes, Sotul, that's obvious. He was playing better, he was winning. But you can actually look at it the other way around, put the cart before the horse, and say that it's actually the nerves that have started to get to him. When he started to see that finish line appearing, he's actually just let some of that on-point play just melt away a little bit, and Spartacus has been able to just navigate his way through that little window that's been left for him by those nerves creeping in. because honestly, Druid is a tough deck to pilot at the very best of times, let alone when you're feeling the nerves of this huge occasion.
Agree. It seems like Thomerio is just getting to that point where every single small decision matters to a huge extent, and he might be punished by that. The small decision of not playing just 2 minions on that Druid, in that Druid game instead of 1 might be costing him the series and the grand final.
Very next game, the decision to not attack into the explosive trap and activate it. So then, and then he got the worst possible punish he could have had with both the bow and the Hunter's Mark coming down, but still, that was the choice he made, and it potentially cost him the game. So these micro decision points in Hearthstone, such a big deal. And you saw another one there, choosing to hero power the Alex Straza champion to set up the Innovate Drake into Moonfire play to get rid of it. In the meantime, he's just taken 11 damage from a 2-drop and a Fiery War Axe.
Nothing happened, but somehow he's at 19.
Yeah.
Right? That's how it looks. And but from the other hand, other side, Spartacus now is in a really bad spot because the Azure Druid just kills the monkey, and you still don't have a good option to trade into that Azure Druid. You need to kill it, that's for sure. But what you will do, you will sacrifice the attack from the weapon, I think so. But then you can't deal with the next minion that is being played, and that was a Fandral. That requires immediate attention. So now, your plan changed because there's a way of dealing the additional 3 damage to the fresh Fandral. But still, the Drake is still on the board, and you don't have a good way to deal with it.
Would you look at that? He does play Bash in this Control Dragon Warrior
And a Brawl.
that he runs. Yeah, I mean,
Brawl.
really like wondering where he's made room for all of these tech cards. Barongeddon in there as well, but now the double Nourish hand for Thomerio against Control Warrior variants. This is the hand that you want. You want to be able to draw through your deck, pick up your resources as quickly as possible here, but he may just feel the need to continue to go for pressure here. I wouldn't blame him for it, but the Nourish, definitely agree with this line overall, just getting his hand together with resources, knows that he's going to not lose the board too aggressively to this Dragon Warrior, since it is a later game control variant as opposed to the aggro variant that you're probably more likely to see on ladder. So knows that it's hard to get punished for not playing for tempo in this situation. Just goes ahead and pulls the resources in his hand with the Nourish.
I agree about that. I think it was a good play, especially with the Emperor in hand, so not really that important, but at the same time we need to think what Spartacus needs to do, because now he will be outvalued every single turn, and this turn just hurts so much to do what he did, sacrificing another card to go into the Azure Drake. When you think about it, Azure Drake is 0 cards value, because it plays on the board and replaces itself in the hand.
Yep.
And then you sacrifice a Fierce Monkey and an Alex Straza champion to kill that single Azure Drake. So basically what you do, you deal with board presence that did cost 5 mana, but you sacrifice board control and hand advantage at the same time. That's a huge cost, especially in those matchups.
Yeah, speaking of value, here is the other upside of going for that Nourish on the previous turn. The Emperor comes down, discounts that now huge hand
7
after
coins.
It's been filled up. 7 coins, 3.5 innovates, whichever way you want to look at it.
Yeah.
That is a lot of discounts in hand. Didn't really hit any of the crucial Malagos pieces in terms of putting together burst damage, but with this hand, the fact that he's playing against a slightly more tempo-focused control deck with all those additional mid-game dragons, he might feel like he can just get there using all these mid-game threats that he has available. And now a second turn of Emperor is going to come out, and he's going to tie it together with the second Nourish. He's going to discount basically his whole deck at this point.
If he gets a Malagos already, that would be a huge swing, but no Malagos, but an entire hand of burst already. So at some point you will get to the Malagos. So just need some board pressure to deal, small amount of damage, just chip damage to finish the game.
Sure. Raven Idol picks up Moonglade Portal. I was actually going to wonder whether he would go for minion or spell there, because he's got pretty much all the spells he could ever need in his hand right now. So the merit of just going for a big minion there is not too bad. It just so works out that he went for spell and got a big minion anyway in the Moonglade Portal, which is reasonable anyway. But now still, how do you deal with this 3/6 on the board?
First of all, you think about the fact that if you can... how can you play to get the Archon Giant next turn on the board for the least amount of mana possible? And I think I like this option.
He's going Feral Rage, Living Roots to take care of the 3-6. The important thing here is that he really wanted to deal with that 3-6 without taking damage on his Emperor, because he saw on the previous turn, his opponent doesn't have an answer for his 5 health Emperor. If it took some damage, then maybe, you know, he has a Slam in hand, or he has a Bash in #2 in hand. Baron Geddon even might be able to take care of it. So really wanted to preserve the full value of his Emperor Thaurissan here. Successfully did that. And as you said, huge discounts to those Arcane Giants as well. That Arcane Giant actually costs 5, right? So he's cast 7 spells this game. Just also has 2 Emperor discounts on top of that.
Which is incredible. No dragon in hand, so that Nethys by Historian is useless. A 1/3 minion for 2 mana is not something that you want to play. And that weapon is also not really helpful. So a 3rd turn of Emperor will happen. It's not as impactful as the first one or the second one.
Right.
But it still just shows how the matchup is going, right?
He absolutely has to play the War Axe here, by the way. He doesn't have to attack with it, but next turn, still, his only answer to Emperor Thaurissan is Baron Geddon Fiery War Axe, and to do that, he has to already have the Fiery War Axe equipped. So definitely like this play. The Rag pickup! The Rag pickup is huge here, just in terms of being able to jam through a whole bunch more damage, but with this insane combination of damage in hand, he's out almost staring at lethal right now, or does he even have it? That's 10 damage from swipes,
10,
12 with the Moonfire,
17?
17 with the Emperor.
No, that's not it.
No.
But I was actually thinking about the Moonglade portal this turn with the Giant. And just keep the dragon in hand for the next turn.
Don't hate it.
He went for a Thanos already, so let's see what will he pick up.
Did he cycle the Wrath into the second Wrath?
Yes,
He did.
he
Wow,
did.
that is disgusting.
For 3 mana.
Yeah.
Not for 4. It's just 3.
So
Actually
the
a huge
double spell damage Wrath now taking out the Drake, digging through his deck even more, getting him all the more closer to that second Living Roots, the Malagos, all the extra burst damage he could possibly want. Innovate picked up now.
Does it change anything? Not really, unless you want to go for the portal. You still can go for
like
the portal into the Giant, but at the same time...
I like Portal no Giant.
Yeah, because you don't know if your opponent is playing a Brawl.
Correct.
I mean, usually you can go with the assumption that the opponent, if he's playing Dragons, then he's not playing a Brawl. But this is a hybrid, and you have seen the Bookworm in one of the previous games.
I like the way you say that. Book them.
I said it incorrectly?
No, you say it with a European intonation that I just cannot muster with my miserable British voice. So there you see, the War Axe Geddon does finally come down and take care of this just mess of a board. That's 3 Emperor activations he's had already on hands that have been nourished twice. And still, the 2 swipes, hang on.
Wait,
hang on a minute.
That was 8, 9, 10.
No, he's still got it. Innovate Rag right now. He's doing it this way, clearing out the minion. Innovate Rag comes down as lethal. I was looking at doing it a slightly different way, but Innovate Rag is going to get the job done in the end. Thomerio puts it together, got off to a flying start. I think the nerves did start to kick in. You can see the relief and anxiety on his face right now as he does kind of stumble rather than charge over the finish line in the end. But the important thing is, none of the rest of that matters. He is in the grand finals. Norway is in the grand finals to go up against Sweden. And we are going to have a finals between Thomerio and Death Boost to decide who is going to be our Nordic champion for Hearthstone, Lothar.
As you said, I think Thomerio actually played very well in game 1 and 2 when he actually had the advantage of almost closing out the entire match super fast. But then something happened. Something switched in his head, and he was like kind of thinking about the entire matches and small misplays, switched into losing an entire game, and that was, I think, the crucial moment for him to think about the tilt that he is on and switching that, right? And just forging that tilt into a victory still. And that was the last possible moment to do that.
Yeah, there was a couple of small moments. Firstly, where he just missed the opportunity to counter-push with his Druid by overloading the board against the Zoo. The second time, this one perhaps more debatable, choosing whether or not to attack into the explosive trap, whether or not that was a mistake. You presented the argument for the side that Thomerio actually went with, which is that you then have those minions to stick around and trade the board. The worst possible punish came down, absolutely devastated his game plan. and was able to get there in the end with the Leroy, but importantly, able to pull it together finally. 3 turns of Emperor sure helps in that last game, but honestly, he would have been pleased to have that pretty straightforward game come out in the end, and you can tell he'd switched back on in the end, because that lethal was not the easiest thing to spot. He saw a way of doing it different from what I was going to do, and he saw it very, very quickly, so impressive performance in the end.
That's really a kind of iconic way of ending a match of Hearthstone with a rag.
Of course.
Which is one of the most hated or loved card in the game. So actually very... I think the card is needed in the game because it brings up so many memorable moments, and I think this is something that Thomerio will remember as well. The rag won him the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, either way, he's going to remember this for sure. We're going to have a quick chance to hopefully get a few words with him before the grand finals, perhaps learn a little bit more about him. But just while we set that up, we're going to take a very quick break. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back, guys.
Efter succén. Tillbaka till vardagen.
Många som tittar på våra klipp tror ju att det som finns på klippen är våra liv.
Så gör ett nytt rum.
Så är det absolut inte.
Det här är inte vad jag planerat, det här är inte vad jag lovade fansen.
Följ YouTube-stjärnorna bakom kamerorna.
Har jag klarat det?
Jockiboi och Jonna, tisdag 20:00 på Via Free.
Welcome back to the Nordic Championships here for Hearthstone, brought to you by Metro as well as via Free. And we are here with our second semi-finalist, Victor. Basically, we now know who's going to be fading Deathbows in the finals. Thomerio, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Coming here as a newcomer and being on this big of a stage as you were, how does it feel? I'm going to ask a stereotypical question. How do you
really
feel?
good because I've been I don't have much experience in tournament play. I haven't played much tournament earlier. I've just I play ladder a lot, but.
I mean, you made these guys' job very difficult because they couldn't find a single thing about you in terms of research.
Exactly. I expected that there would not be much to find.
Yeah, it worked out in your favor. It was a great series.
Yeah. You clearly play the game a ton, right? We saw just from the amount of golden cards that you have that you play a lot of Hearthstone. So when you came to this stage, I think you started the series very well. You were playing extremely well.
Yeah.
Towards the end, did you start to feel the nerves a bit? Because it looked like your play tailed off a little bit.
I really messed up that one turn where I didn't play Mire Keeper. I shit first.
Right.
And I was like, oh shit, now I don't have mana for my Mire Keeper anymore. So that was a big misplay, but also think I missed one damage on one attack on the Councilman.
Yeah, some small things happened, but as Soldo said, the nerves were visible at some point, but now you know how it is, right? You'll get, it should be easier for you to be in the finals and play on top of your game, because I think the first two games were really exceptional, well played, and kudos. That was really well played, and just these small things, those missteps that happened in the next games, you couldn't close up the games. It was very important, but at the same time, when you know that you're making those mistakes, you know how to battle those mistakes in the next match, right?
Like when you're nervous, it's important to think out your turns and wait.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It looked like that was what you were trying to do with that Mire Keeper turn you were talking about. It looked like you said, okay, I'm hero powering for sure. Yeah. Now what else do I do? When actually, no, you weren't hero powering that turn.
I thought I was at 10 mana.
Okay.
And suddenly I saw 9 mana.
There you go.
Yeah. How surprised were you that you got to play Shaman?
I was a bit surprised, but I know that I've been actually talking to Spartacus, and he knows that I play Warrior a lot, so maybe he was scared of a control warrior beating his 2, and
Are you ready to face Deathbows?
Yeah.
Yeah? That's the answer that we're looking for. I mean, that's going to be our next matchup. It's going to be the grand finals here for Hearthstone. And Deathbows, we saw him earlier today. I mean, both series that we've had today have been very even. So what are you guys expecting from this finals?
I think it's going to be a great final, honestly. I think both lineups are very, very powerful. I think you'd admit Deathbows has an experience edge over you for sure, so he probably goes into as the favorite. But if you play like you did in those first 2 games, I think you've got every chance. Yeah,
I agree with Sobel. I think it will be a close match. And if you keep your nerves on, in the line, it should be all fine for you.
Well, you got some time to recuperate, to recover, to get ready for our next series, because we are heading into a short break. But when we are back, it is grand finals time here for the Nordic Championship of Hearthstone.